Welcome to On Film, a podcast which delves into the lives and work of film professionals as they tell us who they are, what they do, and their journeys within the film industry. I'm Adya Shah. Today we have Aarti Kadav on film. Aarti Kadav is a writer and director. She's written and directed her first feature, Cargo, a Hindi science fiction film which stars Vikrant Massey and Shweta Tripathi. The film is currently streaming on Netflix. She's also made several short films such as Time Machine and Us Paar, with her newest one, 55 kilometers per second, currently streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar. She's also the founder of Short Film Window, a space which provides access to various short films. So Aarti, hi, thank you so much for doing this. I just want to start off with your beginnings, essentially. So what was your relationship to films like when you were a kid or when you were growing up?
I grew up in Nagpur, which was a very middle class setup, of really focused on studies. And all exposure to films that I had growing up was like the theaters around the house. So, primarily Bollywood. But I was always fascinated. I was fascinated by the theater environment. I was fascinated by the idea of motion pictures. So, and I was also fascinated about storytelling. So, of all the films that always I ended up liking were had to do with some sort of fantasy, so I always had that. But yeah, it was essentially Bollywood. I think it was only much later when the whole cable TV came in, and earlier in my life, I never had access to it because, again, my household was so focused on studies. I remember the early films that came on Star Movies were all the school films like Terminator, Alien, and I was like just blown over. Like, what is this? Like, or I remember Matrix was one film. I don't know how I ended up seeing. I think we just got we used to get those CDs that we could pirate and see films. So in those one of those pirated CDs, I saw Matrix. So I was really fascinated by those. But my foundation was quite essential Bollywood.
Okay, that's very interesting because I think the films that you're also making now are not really mainstream Bollywood.
Yes.
So I also wanted to know when was the idea, first of all, when was the idea of directing first introduced to you? Did you always want to be a director?
Actually, I discovered filmmaking as a medium of expression when I got myself a camera. So I was actually shooting things, and I think when I was editing stuff and when I was juxtaposing, different images and being able to tell stories, which was more than that, I was figuring out a new language. And I was finding that whole process very attractive, very immersive for me. Like it was challenging. It was like solving a puzzle. So I ended up into filmmaking more as an editor in general, like because I enjoy editing a lot. I love wrestling with footage in general, but I was still doing it at a very amateur level. I would be shooting like 2 minute 3 minute videos, or shooting my friends and them saying something, but like cutting it with different images just to make it funny, like how you do when you're kids, like not kids, but I still young. But so and then I started telling 2 minute 3 minute 5 minute stories, and then I graduated to a 20-minute story which I made as a short film. And the whole process of actually capturing it and making it was amazing for me. And it was like, again, such an amateur job because I was the one with the handycam. I was talking to actors. There's nobody else, me and just the actors, because I thought that's all is required. And director doubled up as cameraman and sound guy. And then later on, you're sitting with it and you're editing it and you're creating it. So I was like really enjoying that. And yeah, so then when I made that, I knew that this was something that I had to explore more. So I actually really approached all the mediums of filmmaking very together, like, but eventually directing was the one that I felt that, see, like, yeah, I can give inputs to editor, but you need specialists for these, for your films to be well made. But I thought directing was something as a good generalist. A director is always a very good generalist, so that came very naturally to me from there to here.
Yeah, I think it's very fascinating to sort of hear that you have approached things altogether. So it's like you've tried a bit of camera, you've tried a bit of editing, and that's how
Yes.
maybe you approached direction. So what I wanted to know is, I mean, I also sort of read that you've done engineering. and you worked at Microsoft for a bit, and then you got into filmmaking. So, at what point did you sort of make that leap to doing engineering, and how did that transition to filmmaking?
Yeah. So engineering came is like it was I was part of that, conveyor belt of, this middle class Nagpur kids where you're doing well in studies, and you either get admission either in medicine or in engineering. And I was actually a very good student. So in fact, my 12th mark sheet was something like I had 100 in maths, 100 in physics, like, the 12th Maharashtra board mark sheet. So I was so it was at that point for me to say, hey, I'm not good. And I always had artistic inclinations, but it was never taken seriously, especially because my mother's side, everybody was either teacher or doctor. My father's side, everybody was engineer. So even to say that you're inclined towards art would look like, what's wrong with you? And they would always say, but you can pursue it as a hobby, not as a profession. So at that point, even I really bought into it, because you're in such an impressionable age. You feel, yes, I have to do this. But I never took to engineering. I was fascinated by programming. I still really like coding, and I love constructing those kind of worlds. But so that's why I chose engineering over medicine, because I was, at least coding was giving me some joy. See, we are like one of those middle class kids, like if we can hustle and do well in whatever we do, like even if we don't like it, because we say, okay, we don't like it, but this is our duty to work, study, and this is our duty to do. So, I was that kind of student. So I did all that, and I got a good job. And getting Microsoft US after studying in India was itself at that point a good gig to get, because if you studied in India and you got not in Microsoft India, but you're actually directly being shipped to Seattle. So it was a great thing, and it was also a lovely experience for me, because I've always been in India. I'd never actually traveled on a plane till I was actually traveling in a micro, going to Microsoft, and I had my own apartment. Suddenly, I was riding a cycle, and suddenly I was like, oh, now I have to choose which car to buy, like, things like that. So that was such a lovely experience. It was a very fairy tale-ish kind of experience for me as a student. But it all that stardust settles down, right? All that joy of going to abroad, all that joy of money settles down, and then you start examining what are you doing every day. And then I used to really think, like, I would go back to matrix reference, and I would say that maybe from Monday to Friday, I am that cell who is like, working hard and enjoying on weekends. And weekends was the time when I was actually, I bought myself a camera, and I used to, write a lot. I used to maintain a blog, which was like 10 years ago, very popular among the NRIs, because it was a girl and, talking about those things. So that's when I was connecting to people, and I was feeling that that's where I'm being myself 100%. And all that 5 years is the rent I pay to, earn those 2 days of like just freedom of shooting my whatever I want to do, or writing whatever I want to do. And but then you realize that like this can't go on forever. In 10 years, I would probably burn out doing that, and I should probably learn filmmaking properly. And it was just a leap of faith. I think I just felt at that point. But at that point, it was not common sense. It was just that whole, you're so much overpowered by the desire to learn filmmaking, and it's so attractive. It was so attractive for me. It was just that I was like, I'm in love with this. I have to try this. Otherwise, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. And I then took a switch. I went to a film school, and when I explored the whole, and that's when I was actually introduced to world cinema and filmmakers who really spoke to me. Like I used to like all the filmmakers. I used to like the madness component in all of those filmmakers, and I was like, you can't be like that in your real life, like but in your films you can be so many people when your stories you're writing, and it was so attractive to me. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm not never going back to software. I'm gonna be a filmmaker and just hustle it through, work hard. Let's see. Yeah.
Okay, nice. But this madness component that you mentioned, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's yeah, that's a good question actually. But so for me, I mean, it's always for me in my films, I always like having windows of, I always see, like for example, even though like there's a small shot which we made very remotely, which was that 55 kilometer, which is just coming out. But in that, what was more attractive to me was not the researching the meteor and which belt it could come, or the physics of it, or how it will fall. Will it fall in pieces, or will it... So that's the physics of it that you research and you study and you put in any sci-fi film. But for me, the madness was that people trying to go for bunkers, and the bunkers are collapsing, and then in that people are trying to, so the human reaction to any extreme situation. And we are not logical when we are actually faced with real crisis. We actually be, all our instincts come out, all our inner those things come out. And I think that was like that is important for me to show in my films. I feel the realism, like a lot of people say that in Cargo, the spaceship, nothing about the spaceship was real, but it feels real only because of the madness of it, like that everybody has, that you feel are so consistent about that, it just starts feeling real. So I always feel that, the maza wala part, like where you are like not thinking about the rules, is like what I really enjoy. Like where I am like, yeah, going mad, like completely. Ki, let's put this, let's put that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I like the fact that you've mentioned this thing about rules. It's something that I also wanted to touch upon regarding exploring science fiction in film, which you have done through Cargo, you have done through Time Machine, and now you're also doing it through 55 kilometers per second. So what I wanted to know is, now these rules that are there, are you referring to rules as tropes? Are they those set kind of things within the genre that you actually absolutely have to include?
Yeah. So I think whenever you make a science fiction, one is the logic in which the world works, and one is the internal logic of the film. And I feel like when you're making a science fiction film, like eventually there's nothing you're putting in there is made up of stone, right? Everything anyways is sand. Like, you're basically taking this idea from here, this idea from there. But when you're putting it together, you have to think that this is stone. Like, idea is that, like, you have to believe in this. If I have now said, okay, this guy has powers, now I have to be very consistent about it, that in puberty people are getting powers. Like, for example, in Cargo, no, everybody will have, like, even the guy who's like the dullest guy who's sitting in the, even he will have it, so I think the rules, when you enter a sci-fi or fantasy world, the rules you come up with, the only rule you have to follow then is that it has to be consistent in the universe of that film. I think that is what you have to you have to make sure. It need not be consistent with the real world. And that's what I like. Like, I mean, of course I can do my research and take things from real world and put in here, because always, the kernel of every fantasy will always be something rooted in reality. Only then it is very exciting. So the kernel is always reality. But on that, you're putting layers and layers of fantasy, and you have to just, it should not be irrational. I mean, it can be irrational to begin with, but by the end of it, it should make sense. So I think that I find very exciting. Yeah. So, yeah.
So this is, then this is purely then getting into world building, which I find, yes, which is very cool, because I think with Cargo, at least, I know that you've created this entire world where there are humans and there are Rakshas, and they have, let's say, they have come together in a way where they're living in some sort of harmony, and there's a very interesting mythological element to Cargo.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's also, it is rooted in the real world, at least with regards to, the way bureaucracy works, or the way gender dynamics works.
That's so rightly, it's so cool that you identified that, because I feel that the bureaucracy that we recognize in our day-to-day lives being there on the spaceship was a bigger triumph of Cargo over the Rakshas world. Like, the bureaucracy was what made it very Indian. The environment of the spaceship felt Indian because of that, like the way Nitya sir was interacting with Yuvishka and all. So I think that was what is making it Indian more than the Rakshas part. That is like, okay. But I think the bureaucracy was like the heart of it. Yeah.
So how did Cargo come about? What was the initial idea for it, and how did it become what it is right now?
So it was very cool, because very recently we were discussing, and I know the Cargo initial idea, the one line that came to me was, what if there's a man who lives alone in a spaceship, and everybody who dies, comes there, and he's just been doing transitioning for them. Like he makes them go through this process. He sends them off for rebirth, and he does that. He meets this, like, loads of passenger, but at the end of the day, he's a very lonely guy. So that was the first one line of the cargo that was there. And and I started from there, and then I was trying to build story around it, like, and first version of cargo had a love story where he fell in love with a cargo and transition, and then she dies, something like that. The first was that. And a lot of my team was very attached to it when we said, okay, no, it's not working, because it was not working, because it was becoming illogical. Emotionally it was stronger, but like it was illogical, that how is cargo this, that, like, so then I was like, no, let just one girl with this come in, and then let's talk about a job like that will present what is it that disillusion that guy. Let it, let it eclipse this girl also, and let her then emerge from it. Let this guy help her emerge from it, and then maybe that could be the basis of the story. So that's how we were developing it. So it was essentially, but the core was that let there be a spaceship with busy with people coming. If budgets would have allowed, I would have made it a very busy spaceship. And with this guy, at the end of the day, feeling the quietness, the stillness of the environment after, the whole parties or all the people have left. So yeah, so that was the one line.
Okay. And regarding, you also mentioned just now budgets. So what were the budgetary constraints that you faced? And like you said, it's also now, I think, directly impacted story. So what other elements did the budgetary constraints impact?
No, it basically cargo was made in a very shoestring budget. In fact, we had it's lesser than what you would even expect a film that you go and shoot in a village is. Like, it's even lesser than that. So we were hustling. We were getting these for these many days, that for these many days, and just putting it together. So, like, in fact, the budget was as less as possible. Like, jahan pe bhi kaat sakte ho, kaat do. Well, that was the idea. Like, so it impacted every department for sure. The good thing was, because we were so conscious of budget, we did extreme pre-production. So that was a thing, that was a plus. Because the pre-production, so we were like, okay, एक ही costume देते हैं, hero, heroine, okay, we don't have to change it 20 times, like, So then we are coming up with uniforms, and then, so those things were like very interesting, like, or we were thinking how to, use the spaceship properly, like, so things like that. So, or reuse the spaceship. So those were very interesting solutions that we were coming up with. But in general, every department, like the costume department was impacted, production design. I think when you're working on low budget, one is, of course, you're talking about things that show up on the screen. But my thing is, like, when you're working on low budget as a director, there's a lot of pressure for you on things that are behind the scene as well, which you should not have ideally. For example, like, your team is smaller, so there's a lot of pressure. The biggest other challenge is the number of days you get to shoot, like that it directly comes from the budget. And when you have working on a story which send in a spaceship, it needs time to light, it needs time to get things right, like, the shots take time to get right. So you cannot quickly just take and run, like these are properly blocked shots. So then you're basically cutting down a number of shots you're taking per day. So a lot of things impact behind the scenes, which nobody shows, but it impacts the film. Like, you can't, I always say that whatever is affecting you during filmmaking will show in the film, because the inventor shows in the invention, the state of mind of the inventor will show in the invention. So, we tried to cover a lot during the edit. Like, we had a whole sequence chunk which we couldn't shoot, like, which was like right in the middle. So you will never know that we never shot it. So those things were always there. So yeah.
How did you end up finding producing partners for this?
One thing was that I had decided that I'll make this with no matter what, like whether I had money or not. And I jumped into it. I signed up for all the constraints myself and I jumped into it. And everybody who came in, like whether it was whistling with support, or whether who came in as co-producers, or Shlok and Naveen, fundamental pictures, who came in as producers, they all knew me and they all knew my struggle for a while. So they knew I was not like just trying to do something with, and they all had seen Time Machine. They all knew that I could deliver. So in fact, I was very blessed that all these people told me that we don't know. In fact, there's very clear words that Shloka said, that I don't know what you're making, but whatever you're doing, we want to be part of it and we'll help you finance it. And that's the same thing Rahul Puri had said. And that's how, and actually I worked with those people who showed that confidence in me. And I was also worried with that confidence, because obviously when someone believes in you so much, you also want to deliver you, and you want to make life great for them, like, for showing that faith. Such, because in this industry nobody kind of shows that kind of faith, that whatever you're making will support you. They all say, what is the synopsis, what is the script, what is this, can you have some creative input, like, but they were like, whatever you're making, we are going to be part of it. And I think that made a huge difference. And that's how I also identify my partners, people who know that we are working very hard, we're working very sincerely, and they want to help us make it better. Like, I mean, it's a nice way to choose partners. Yeah.
No, that's good. And I've sort of been familiar with this entire the way the film industry works, where they're not going to really believe in your vision immediately. So
Yeah.
I also I'll first off start off by also asking you about your short films, because you had also said that your producing partners were familiar with your previous work. So
Yeah.
when you're also going from a short film space to a feature film space, what is that transition like?
I think, yeah. So I worked on short films of different lengths, like right from 3 minutes to 20 minutes to 40 minutes, which I thought was, made me ready for a feature film, because a 40-minute is literally like, 30-40 minutes short of a feature film. But the whole game changes the moment you're on the set saying that it's a feature. When you're on a short film, right, everybody is like, the energy is um, little bit more relaxed. First of all, as a director, you're carrying a bigger film in your head when you're shooting the film. And you're also, for example, a short film would be taking 10 days to shoot, which is, see, I think 10 to 15 days anybody can shoot very happily. It's when you are shooting for 30-35 days is when the challenges start coming through, or whatever challenge, whether it's financial challenges or challenges of team relationship, all that comes in the last 5-10 days, because that's when everybody's stressed. Then all that pretense also drops, that okay, I have to please anyone. So the moment you jump from a feature, from a short to feature, you see all these real challenges. I think the budget wise everything changes, like the sound, the post budget especially really changes when you go from short to feature, and even overall. So the stress on you is a lot more when you're doing a feature, like as a director, than when you're doing a short. So that's why I like short, because short is, even if you fail or whatever, it is meant for it's a playground to play in. Like, short, you should actually do things where you should fail sometimes, because you are experimenting by definition. And feature, if you fail, the the cost of failure is very high for everyone, like for your producer, for you, for your actors. So you have to be a lot more cautious, you have to be a lot more worried, and like, overall, I ended up following the same processes, because when I used to make my shot, I used to really worry the same thing, ki yaar, kharab nahi hona chahiye, it should be perfect. But at the time of feature, the stress was a little more, like overall the overall responsibility, everything was a little extra. So it just felt like a very different experience than a short was like, okay, I'm going, I'm having fun, like, but feature, I was like, okay, this has to be right and stuff like that. So yeah.
It sounds like it sounds like there's so much riding on this feature. Because I think now
Yeah.
your crew is also would be slightly bigger than a short. The amount of
Yes.
footage you're also shooting would be
Yes.
more. Also, I
Yeah.
think there's also there is VFX work which is clear in Cargo. So how do you go about sort of writing and then doing pre-production, keeping VFX in mind? And then after that, what was also your post process like?
So I have, like, I have always had a lot of passion for VFX and animation in general. So I'm kind of, I have dabbled with it. I myself wanted to do stop motion at some point. And, I went through a phase where I was like, I'll only do stop motion animation as my films and stuff like that. So I used to do it at home, like take pictures and move things and stuff like that. So I have a little bit of domain knowledge in that. So I understand the costing requirements or the complexity of any VFX piece I put in. Like, so it's a blessing and it's a curse. Because blessing, because then you know that when you're writing it in, you know that okay, this can be achieved and this must cost, or the curse is that like sometimes when you want to go wild, you're like that knowledge kind of prevents you from going wild. Yaar, ye kaise karenge? Like, those worries start taking over. So when I am writing it, I'm very much aware of that these portions is going to be VFX and these are the things. And I know that eventually the VFX should not be more than 10 minutes, if you take all the shots together. So I'm very aware of that. I calculate and put it in. Even when we were shooting, I knew that if Cargo was like, there were a lot of green screens, but we were very careful that all green screens are only on one angle. So when my shots, so basically if I'm shooting for all four sides, then only 25% of shots for that scene will require VFX. The 75% we can, need not go for a VFX. So these were the things that I was very careful was, even when we were designing set and I was planning it out. The post was like, the post of Cargo was always very, it was very long, because I think, so VFX also was of 2-3 types. One was the VFX, which was creative, where we had to do the animation and put the animation there. The second, we're designing the screens, and we wanted to have a very uniform language for that. Like, so we designed the screens like all together, and then like, in fact we designed more screens than what you have seen in the film. But that was like, so the guy who designed the screen was different than the guy who was pasting the screen, like, so the pipeline was very confusing, because I was talking to 4-5 types different people at the same time. And then there was the CGI aspect, where we were doing the spaceship, and the CGI team, like earlier we started with someone else, but it was just not working out, and then we worked with someone else, so that was also a process. So, and we also realized that management of those shots, like, because of course the VFX shots come in, but they will all come in like a bunch, and then we have to put it in our timeline. So the management of it, because there were so many of shots, like 60-70% of the film was like good amount of VFX, or the shots were like that. The management became, and none of us had the experience of managing it, like to confirm, like how to label the shots and give, and what documents should be maintained for it. So that, I thought, that was a new thing that we came up with, that like basically the management aspect, which we never think that like how do you manage shots, but that was always a challenge, because it was coming from this place, that place, this place was doing only half. So there was one shot, like there's this Vikrant that zoom out shot, which is like where we saw the entire spaceship, that was being done by like four people at the same time, and it was like all this one guy was because if you will see in the film, the set will never give me allowance to zoom out till there, right? Or there will only be space of going till there. So there is some guy who was doing this and creating this. The other guy was the CGI team who was creating the rest of the spaceship and things like that. So it was also very complicated. It was a shot that like till the end we couldn't get it right. Like, so I also realized that like there's always will be this 20% of shots that will be bothering you till the end. Like, you keep, they'll take most of the time, 80% of time. And the 80% of VFX is very cool, like, karo dalo, like, So those were the things. Another thing that I could talk about was like even the screens where you see Ritigya and Chaitanya. So those were all like Konkana. All these were shot separately and added on the TV later. So we didn't just paste the shot as is. Like, in fact, we also did a treatment on the way those screens appear. So we did the RGB layering and separated it out and stuff like that. So that it looks like it's a old TV footage. So that also were two team involved. One team was doing the separation and providing the footage, and other guy was pasting it. So our job was to make sure he pasted in the right screen, the management, like even with all that management, there were errors. So there was so those things were all there, but yeah, they were all behind the scenes. But it was like, it was little non-trivial, the VFX of Cargo especially. Yeah.
So what were your other learnings then? Like if VFX is, let's say, one big learning as to learning how to manage things, what were your other learnings which maybe you can use for your next projects?
I think my biggest learning is always that like the more you do pre-production, the more more time you give before the film, it is always will be, add up. It will add up till the end, like not just during the shoot. It will add up even during the post. Like for example, there was some stuff that we designed, like for example the newspapers that Prahasta sees or whatever is there, we had designed it in the pre-production and we just put it in the iPad. So like VFX ka one thing gone. And it always, those shots VFX were always, even in the post, they looked better than when you paste it. Like, but that's just one of the examples. But I think the good planning till the end of post, because now when you make a sci-fi heavy film, for me the shoot is no more the main aspect of making a sci-fi film. I think it's just one of a very smaller and easier process. The post is where like lot of things happen. So I mean, like the shoot is the portion you shoot is just an input for your edit and for your VFX. That's how I started seeing the film. So getting the footage is like earlier you would feel that once you've shot, you've made the film, but as like that's where you started with the film, like actually. So that was what I realized. So I always felt a good planning, a good script will always help. I think for me, most learning for Cargo was more at the narrative level, based on whatever I was getting feedback on and stuff like that. And I got very diverse feedback, and I got and I'm very happy that people outside India really like Cargo, because I still get calls from them and I still get messages from them. I knew that like it's not a typical Indian film for everybody to like, but I still felt that there were few things we already had in our footage which we could put, which could have made it more wider for a lot of people. That's what I felt. So that was my biggest learning at narrative level, essentially. But yeah, that was there. And yeah, and I think the other was on team management. Um, Before this, I was very about, if a team member was not performing well, I was a little impatient in general with a team member. Now post Cargo, I've learned a lot of patience in mentoring people. Like I think I've developed massive patience, because I think one is of course a skill set a person brings to the table, but the other is the desire to learn and desire to improve and do good. And if I see that desire in the person, I'm okay with a person being initially not well versed.
During pre-production for Cargo, did you know for sure who you wanted on your team? Like, were there certain people who were absolute, like, oh, I have to get this person? And were
I
there
think
any new players who you got
so.
introduced
In
to?
fact, yeah, Cargo has actually 6 to 7 newcomers. So there are a lot of new players. But I was very clear, even if I was not clear on the person, I was very clear on the skill set, because I was very skill set focused also, and I'm still a little bit, because for sci-fi, you need, see, sci-fi, if it breaks, right, it will become a joke. If you don't buy the universe of sci-fi, the whole film will fall apart. Like every other efforts will go down the drain. So for me, the skill set was very important. And like for example, and I knew I wanted people who could give time and energy to it. For example, when I was looking for cinematographer, I was not looking for a seasoned guy who would say ki acha 30th se first se 20th tak shoot hai, so I'm free 5 days before that. I needed a guy who could give it that time, that pre-production. So that way I was very blessed that I got Kaushal, who was just fresh from the film school, eager to give that time, and he had space and time. I think in future films, even he will not have that time that I need from him for the pre-prod, because having a DOP throughout the pre-prod available to take decisions on colors, take decisions on costume was a big plus for me, rather than him just showing up on like last few days to just shoot the film. And we also had 2-3 levels of shot breakdown, which really helped us, because as I said, we worked under so many constraints that we had to really innovate last minute. In fact, like some days, we were told that last 3 days of shoot are just taken away, and our schedule had planned for last 3 days. So now we had to accommodate last 3 days in this existing days, of shoot. So having that intense pre-prod with a cinematographer and having that relationship really helped in, innovating on the spot and making it happen. So that was a plus. So production designer, I was very sure that I didn't want a new production designer. I wanted a seasoned one because the finish and that was very important. I think every team should be in general a mix of new and old. New people will bring in a lot of freshness. For example, my music director was new and he used to design music for games. So he brought in a lot of freshness in the music. But my sound designer was very seasoned, Anish John, and like he's the best in what he does. And I think that kind of like really for me worked. Like, you know, having a mix of uh, new and old. Like, yeah.
Also, I think with regard to your cast, I think I want to know at what point did Vikrant Massey and Shweta Tripathi, at what point did they come in, and did you always want them for these roles?
Yes, so I had my eyes on Vikrant Massey for a longest time, though I was not sure if he would do this film, because you know, as I said, we were starting with such a shoestring outlook that like you know whoever does it would have been happier. Shweta, I knew because I'd met her before and stuff like that, and I'd quite liked her energy. I thought she was very intelligent and very bright, and at that point, she was the only actress I had access to. And so in fact when I was writing the story, I wrote it with her in mind. So the first draft of Cargo had the character's name only as Shweta. So and I because and then I saw the film with her, so for me it was non-negotiable that I go for someone else, because at that point I was just seeing her when I was writing the film. And then we were looking for a male guy and we couldn't decide whom. And the Shweta just then had started with Mirzapur. And she said, there's this very brilliant actor I'm working with, Vikrant. I said, I know Vikrant, but will he do this? She said, what's harm in trying? So we just went and spoke to him and Vikrant just did it. So it was lovely. Yeah.
So I wanted to know also if you're working with a cast which, let's say, doesn't have any experience in working in sci-fi, like a genre like this. So how do you go about pitching the film to them and or talking them through the world?
Yeah. So actually, yeah, and that's a very good again observation, because not just the cast, even the crew was like, you know, as I said, crew, the post guys, we were not used to working in such a sci-fi heavy film. So it was induction by fire for all of us. But as far as the cast is concerned, for me, I think the only thing that worked, and I think it worked with Shweta, was that I just gave the screenplay. I said, you read and you tell me, will it work for you? And when we met Vikrant, so because I'm not a very good narrator of my own ideas, because I get lost in the details when I'm telling the story, like you know, so and maybe screenplay is a good document for me to communicate my story. So I tried to give them stories, but I always was ready with my 5 minute pitch, like of what the story is about. And I always used to say, there's a spaceship that comes close to Earth every morning, and the cargoes come in, and they are the people who have died on Earth. So at least they would be intrigued enough to go and read this script. So I would always be telling them the story. I said, then the story is about like what happens in the spaceship, and then I want you to read this script. Yeah.
That's great, I feel, because it sounds like actually such an easy process then. If they are
Yeah.
automatically, if they have read the script and they just get it.
Yes, 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 yes. So I actually lucked out, because I've had I had tried to make another film where it was not that smooth. In spite of having a production house, the process was not smooth. And I think it always worked in all this, you know, with Cargo, the pitch was always different. The pitch was like, I'm shooting this in Jan, this is the one line, and this is the screenplay. I think it always makes a difference when you also have a very clear deadline, that you're very clear in your intent कि I'm shooting this in Jan. I thought that was making a lot of difference, because they said कि अच्छा Jan में एक महीने का shoot है, anyway New Year से निकल के कुछ काम नहीं करते तो चलो एक film कर लेते हैं. Like you know, that was with a lot of actors. I'm not talking about leads, because they were anyways insanely always busy and a lot of things happening for them, and for them it's a bigger stake doing a film, you know, because if the film is not good, it kind of impacts their career and stuff like that. But for the rest of the people, it was like कि ठीक है, Jan first month ठीक है, like you know, the pre-production is end of the December, where anyways people are just celebrating Christmas and stuff, so we are doing pre-production, then Jan we are shooting, and that's it, like you know. So I think that kind of also helped a lot. Yeah.
In terms of, I think, just the themes of the film, it's very philosophical. There is a lot of dialogue about reincarnation, death, life, forgetting, remembering. So I wanted to know where does this all stem from? Is it from films you've watched? Is it from things you have read? So, yeah.
Yeah, so I always have had some obsession with, death in general, as because I feel the finiteness of life gives it a lot more meaning. Like, the fact that we know our time is limited, then it kind of, you can't do everything. Then you have to choose things you want to do. And I've had my share of existential crisis in my life where I've wondered what is the purpose of my life, and things like that. So all my films to certain extent is like, try to examine that. It's not that I have clear answers. I think my films are a way of for me to asking more questions on that. So like in Cargo, like what she asks, Yovishka, ki kisi bhi cheez ka kya matlab hai? It's a question you always wonder, like if you're all gonna die, then what is the meaning of anything? And somewhere for me it is, philosophically I believe that, like, forever is not in living forever, but forever is in those very real connections you make with people. And it could be just few seconds of connections, but that is sometimes more forever than, like, having like a long life and stuff like that. So that's where somewhere I try to arrive at. And Cargo in general, the first draft for Cargo was not at all philosophical. It was all fun and games till the end. But I also felt it was, if you're telling a story about what happens to people on the death, and if you don't examine the purpose of life, then you're not doing justice to that story. You have to examine what is the meaning of life, and you have to give hope through that. Because it's always good to laugh at all those deaths, but there's a tragedy to it also, right? That all these lives got cut short mid, whatever. Like, so that was always the goal, that if you're telling a story like this, and I think sci-fi always is a very good mechanism to make your philosophical question storyable. Like, I think sci-fi is the best vehicle for that. So I felt that it's always, the genre also demands it, like that we kind of go in those layers, and give it those, little foundation, those depths, like, yeah.
So Prasannata and I were also talking about Cargo, and we also realized that there is some sort of a seeing similarity with other films. Like there is, let's say, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, then Moon, then
Yeah. But
bits
the
and
funny
pieces.
part is, like, yeah, if only sci-fi book I haven't read is Hitchhiker Guides to Galaxy. So and it's book I've missed reading, and whenever my co-writers express, I would fake and say, "Ha, maine padhi hai," like, because I was too embarrassed to admit that I haven't read. But now I'm very intrigued to read it. What you're saying about Moon is so true, because Moon was very much Moon's space. When you speak of space as a character, which becomes a very important thing, especially if you're talking about single location film. Moon was my biggest reference to my production designer, but I said कि ये भी कर लिया because the budget my production designer had was a fraction of the guy that Moon had. I said ये भी कर लिया, but थोड़ा colors के साथ करेंगे तो मजा आएगा, like, like, and थोड़ा सा उस clunky करना है, मतलब वो बहुत sharp है, वो sharp तो we won't be able to achieve, so the clunkier and colorful version of Moon. So that was there. And which other films, like, yeah, so Moon was a very clear reference. So there's no wonder you felt that there was similarity. And what else?
No, I just wanted to ask you in terms of what were the things you read or watched or referenced?
Okay, so yeah, these were the things. But so I started, whenever I reference any sci-fi, I begin with reality. So I always begin with, lot of research from NASA and in ISRO spaceships and stuff like that. Like, in fact, like, if you see outside in Pushpak 64, the Pushpak is written in Hindi, because all Indian spacecrafts have their names written in Hindi, not English.
Yeah.
So things like that. Even the room. But then when I saw the reality, only thing I carried over from NASA and ISRO was the uniforms, the badges. You can search for the NASA space uniform, and you will see Prasthar uniform. One on one, you'll find correspondence of badges. So they have like 20 badges of 20 companies. So that kind of, actually, that researching for that costume actually informed my story, because then I started having 2-3 companies. Then you also think that एक company बस space भेजने के लिए है. One company is for the maintaining of relationship with government. One is the private firm. that has some investment in it. So things like that. So that I started a lot of research from reality. Then we researched all the like I had a wonderful AD, Aditya Pawar, who did very extensive referencing of Gravity and few films. And from there he was suggesting ki, this we can use, this we cannot use. See, a lot of things we anyways couldn't use because of the budget constraints, but free things we could use. For example, Gravity mein Clooney's writing with pencil on a pad of paper, so that we could use, things like that. So that's how we came to it. And I mean, from there I came to an idea that we could have interesting looking printouts that she refers or he refers, which makes it look like these guys are talking about like real stuff, things like that. So from here and there we picked up stuff like, yeah, and knobs and stuff was like a very Star Wars, Star Trek universe, the table, central table with knobs and lights and stuff that we took from there. So like, but it was all mix match. And then there was something of our own also, because we had proper design of the spaceship. And I was very sure I wanted to make it colorful and retro. So that was, and clunkier. Like I didn't want it to be perfect. I hated that. Like Moon spaceship, only issue I had with was it is a perfect spaceship. And every mechanism wears out over a period of time. So I just wanted to make sure that it is falling apart in places. Like, yeah.
That's very interesting to listen to, because that the quirkiness and the fact that it is retro, it really jumps at you when you're watching it. It's because it's I feel there's so much more to discover, like, because in terms of the fact that even if you have a spaceship, let's say of a certain with a certain kind of interior, you have this 80s looking sort of CRT monitor that they have where they talk to Nitya through. And it's, in terms of that, I just found it very interesting how you have this one thing here that is, it's different. It's not necessarily fitting in with everything else, but it lends so much, it makes it feel not just real, but I think just more interesting.
Yes, yeah. This is where the madness comes in, what we began with, the madness part of it. Like, yeah.
And it's somewhere also, I think, fitting in with the rules of the world, I guess, because to what I've seen is very difficult, I think, to do is to fit everything in, to apply a logic to everything. So I think in that respect, I think you've done it very well, where everything fits perfectly.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, the full credit to the team. It's like the clumsy team made a clumsy spaceship, and that was fun. Like, yeah, it was real, but like it was real in its clumsiness. Yeah.
We don't see sci-fi movies in mainstream Indian cinema. So what I want to know is, what do you think are the reasons for that, and what do you think the film industry can do better to, explore sci-fi more?
I think now there is little bit of interest, because with the OTT, there's so much plurality of content that I think they might be open to sci-fi. Also, I think like 2-3 sci-fi series I know are coming up. So it is great, and ours was a bigger challenge because we were the first ones trying to do it. And we went through those rounds of the studios where we were like pitching, and like we could see that they are absolutely not interested, already seeing the time, you want to make sci-fi. So I think one of the reasons was that, one is of course sci-fi, the benchmark for sci-fi is this crazy Hollywood blockbusters, which involves a lot of VFX, which basically means a lot of cost that goes in. Also because nobody has done, so there's no precedence, right? So when nobody does it, like for example, for Interstellar to exist, there are so many other space movies that existed before it, right? So for when he says I want to make a space movie, they say, oh, they say, okay, let's see what space movie he makes. Like it's more like that. But here, if I tell you want to make a space movie, they say what? Like, but how will it look? How will the actors act? Will people understand? And that whole thing is, will people understand, is a very big question for a lot of people. Which is I think that people understand. Like people are way smarter than people assume they are. So, but those are always the question, that will the average rickshaw goer understand? Because the moment you say sci-fi, the science part of it scares off people. Like, that will the masses, whatever, which I always disagree with. Like, I always felt that if your story, as I said, that if the rules of the story are consistent in the world, anybody will understand. Like, and people, in fact, would be will enjoy it. It's sort of an escapist cinema that Bollywood anyway is famous for, which sci-fi can provide them. Like, so, but yeah, so I think initially was that the high budget one was that, like, will people get it? And sci-fi, all said and done, requires a certain domain knowledge. Even if, I mean, any director can pick up a sci-fi and do it, but then that amount of work they need to put in, like, to make it look plausible. Like, we are like sci-fi freaks. Like, some of us are, like, we have consumed so much sci-fi, we have seen so much sci-fi, so that it kind of makes it less scarier. Like, otherwise, and you can come up with solutions if their budgets are low, if this is less. So I think that also helps. And I know that it's also practice. Yeah, like, the more you do, the more you learn also. Like, not just filmmaking, but the sci-fi aspect of it, the world building part of it. uh, so I think that kind of, yeah, that's also there. And but I think it's all changing, because I know, like, a lot of other filmmakers are venturing into sci-fi. I know a lot of people who have said that we are making the sci-fi series, would you be interested in writing or this or that? So I know they're going ahead with those projects with or without me. So I know there's a lot of sci-fi that is getting made, so it's very exciting.
It does sound exciting because I think it's such an unexplored space, and it's a space that we always have, like you said, that Western sci-fi as that benchmark. That here
Yeah.
I feel it's so unexplored. There's so much you can do with it.
Yes. True. Like, we are making if we make a spaceship film, we'll be the first spaceship film. If we make a time travel film, we'll be the first time travel film. So that is also very exciting, like, to be in the, beginning of any era, like beginning of the sci-fi era of Hindi movies. So that's a very exciting space to be in. Like,
Have you ever thought of venturing into other genres?
actually, my earlier films were, I had written another screenplay which were not sci-fi, which were, like, actually, yeah. So I also, like, off late, during 2020 pandemic, I did binge watch Hitchcock a lot. So I was very interested in very thriller, strong plot-based thrillers as well. So I am excited about other genres as well. But currently my fascination for sci-fi is like maddening. So yeah, I will get to it. I mean, I like other stories, but when I see a sci-fi story, I was like, okay, let's do it. Like, I go like that. So yeah.
Is there any, you mentioned screenplays you've written in the past. So is there any particular story that you desperately, badly want to get made, but it didn't get made?
Yes, there is one screenplay, actually. I will actually start crying if I start talking about it, because I
Okay.
worked very hard on that.
Okay,
Very
no
hard on
problem.
that. Yeah. But it never got made. But I know when it will get made, it will be like a very beautiful story, because it's a very nice story. It was very gentle and delicate, and it's a lovely sci-fi, so I hope it gets made. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I really want it now. Now that you've mentioned this to me, I really hope it gets made, and I'm sure it'll be great. So 55 kilometers per second is your newest film that you have made during lockdown?
Yeah, it's a short film, actually. It's just an experiment I did. I was sitting like this on a Zoom call, and I was like, the actor was on Zoom call. There was one cinematographer on Zoom call. There was one AD who was just, and we just tried to shoot everything remotely, like using the phone camera of the actor. So I mean, it had Richa. So in Richa's case, so Richa was herself, placing the camera and shooting and giving it. So it was a little complicated to the whole process, because it being completely remote, and then they would shoot and send it, and I'll check on phone and then choose the best take and stuff like that. But it was just an experiment I wanted to do and see how much you can create the world by just, like, essentially, everybody using their phone cameras and doing everything remotely, how much what we can create. So it was that, like, yeah.
What is the film about? Can you talk about it?
Oh, it's a story. Basically, a meteor is coming towards Earth, and it's been coming towards since last 25 days. So today 3 p.m. is when it's gonna hit, and we know all the rich people are and government people are finding ways to go to space. So there's a lot of air traffic. People are going there, and there's some people for whom the government has provided bunkers, but there's a lottery system. And but like for majority of people, the 90% of people, they know they're just gonna be in their house and they're all gonna die. Like there's no escape, because the lottery system is just catering to few 1% or 2% of people. So it's just this last few hours of a guy who gets into a call with one of his friends, because he's just like, okay, what to do, and just gets on with call with the friends, and he ends up confessing his love for older one of his batchmates, who's now married and moved on and stuff like that.
Okay, I wanted to also know about Short Film Window because I understand you've started it, I think, post film school.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so what prompted you to start it?
Yeah, because I always wanted to look for good short films and I could never find it. Like what to type on YouTube, good short films, and then there's the link appears, but they were also contextless. Like, I would not know what to click on, whether they are good or bad. And then I also realized that a lot of Indians also make short films, but they are just lost in the YouTube. Like they enjoy massive popularity when it's released, and then it's just forgotten. So it just started with let just have your repository of good short films, little bit, arranged little bit properly, like based on genre, have some context on that, like who made it, what was the story behind it, and some review of it, so that when you're going to watch it, at least because you're always very resistant to try out a short film. So I always felt that, like, some context would help it. And then actually gradually it started growing. Like I started with just documenting the films I liked, like, so initial films or short films are all these classical very good films, like, by big filmmakers and stuff like that. But gradually also some Indians, like, filmmakers started submitting. Sometimes even the international guys submitted their films to us. So it's like, just a community which very organically grew. And then I stopped it when I was making Cargo, because there was no time to manage it and stuff. But post that, like, when this whole 2020 thing started, like we were all indoors, I was still curious. Then I was like, let's see what are the good short films in the market, and let's see. And again I had the same problem, that okay, I can't find how to search. Then I said, okay, now let's just do that again on a more regular basis. And I'm happy that we could spotlight few good voices coming from India as well. So I think that was a good plus of 2020 for us. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I feel this kind of repository is very much needed because, again, just a second, yeah, short films are things that basically they're not all, you don't necessarily find them on the big platforms. You might find
Yes.
some which probably
Yeah.
were screened at festivals or they've won an Oscar
Yeah.
or something, but
Yeah.
anything that's sort of locally, with done
Yeah.
locally, which have, newer filmmakers trying newer things,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
generally, for me also, is hard to find.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I never go to Netflix to watch a short film, because that's not my mindset. So I always feel a smaller platform dedicated for that. When I'm like, I want to see short films, then you can go there and start watching. Like, that is for me always better than going to Netflix, because I would go to Netflix to watch a series or basically entertainment that will sort me for the entire evening. So I always feel that platform dedicated for shorts is a good idea. Like, yeah. Mhm.
So I know that I mean, to write sci-fi, you also need to read a lot of sci-fi. So I know that you like Jorge Luis Borges and
Yeah.
writers like that. And are there any sort of lesser known sci-fi writers that you have read and you've never really gotten a chance to talk about?
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, Ted Chiang, I don't know if he's lesser known. He enjoys a lot of popularity. So I really enjoyed Ted Chiang. Actually, when I started reading his stories, I connected with him so much. Then I was like, how can I connect with an author so much? Then I realized he also works for Microsoft and he writes. So I was like,
Yes.
maybe we have the same, maybe the same, at least mentally, we probably studied the same things. And that's why our sci-fi, clicks so well. So those were the thing. The other, there's one other sci-fi writer I quite like, which is Greg Egan. His short stories are very good, but his book Permutation City was also very interesting. There's one female sci-fi writer who I feel is god of sci-fi writers, Ursula Guin, if you've heard of her. Ursula Guin
Yes.
is like,
Yes.
yeah, so she is like just like she's written all kinds of stories in sci-fi, like, and she's very good in examining sci-fi, not just in terms of, she has this, she brings in a anthropological background to sci-fi. So she's very good in, when you talk about different planets, she's the one who can really design the species and the societal structure really good. Like, I've never seen anybody else doing it as like, she's a superstar in that field. Like, so I'm a huge fan of her for that. uh, I also love a lot of Chinese sci-fi and Japanese sci-fi. In fact, my favorite sci-fi story for this year is from a Japanese guy. It's called Standing Woman, where the government, if you dissent, the government convert you into a tree. So basically they plant you on the thing, and then you gradually convert into tree. So gradually things around you, your body starts turning green, and your branches start coming out. But you're like, so it is a very slow process. So first 30-40 days you're aware this is happening to you, and it's very heartbreaking. And after 10 years you become a complete tree. So you're like, so I thought that's like so relevant to our times, though she made it some other time. And The Standing Woman is about a man whose wife gets converted into a tree, and he's forbidden to go near her, but he keeps watching her from far away, seeing his wife gradually turn. So it was so heartbreaking. It was such a lovely story. So I'm forgetting the writer's name, but he's the same guy who wrote Paprika and
Okay.
The Girl Who Jumped Through Time. So he's a very good
Okay.
writer. Like, so yeah, there are a lot of writers I quite enjoy. So yeah. So
And is there any kind of, is there any difference you're seeing between Western sci-fi writers and Eastern sci-fi writers?
yes, I think the context of it, right? Like the Western sci-fi writers, like I think they were always about a soul guy exploring a world, like and it is a lot of Western sci-fi is around that, like that Superman kind of analogy, that one man, one immigrant, or whatever. That's the whole thing, because the societal structure is also like the unit is family unit is husband wife. But when you say Eastern sci-fi, the society unit is your entire joint family is your societal unit, your what your neighbors think and all. So the whole the story, the way it plays out in Eastern sci-fi is always a very I think it works for us as Indians better than the stories that are playing out in the Western world, where there's this one man rescuing and one woman finding him and stuff like that. Like, and Eastern sci-fi is more like that, about this, my family is getting broken apart and stuff like that. So I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks so much for doing this. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same
Um,
here. Yeah.
you can find our newest episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow our Instagram and Facebook pages for more updates in the description below.